There's a precise moment when all real transformation happens, and it's not when you feel inspired, motivated, or aligned. It's exactly when your entire body screams that something is profoundly wrong, when every cell seems to resist the change you've declared, when the discomfort is so intense you question whether you should continue. Most people interpret this moment as failure, as evidence that manifestation isn't working, as a sign they should immediately stop and return to familiar territory. But here's the secret that separates those who collapse new realities from those who remain trapped in infinite loops of the past. This visceral discomfort, this cellular resistance, this existential unease isn't a sign of failing, it's biological, neurological, and quantum proof that transformation has already begun, that you're exactly where you need to be for the leap to happen. If you're watching this now and in recent days, weeks, or months have declared a new reality, but felt everything got worse, heavier, more confusing, more chaotic, then pay close attention, because I'm about to reveal why this isn't just normal, it's the only possible path to real quantum manifestation. And before we continue, if this message has already resonated deeply with you, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, because what I'm about to share in the next few minutes could completely transform your understanding of how reality responds to your intentions. What neuroscience has discovered about this phenomenon is both fascinating and disturbing to our traditional understanding of change. When you declare a new identity, one you affirm are abundant, or I am free, I am healthy, your brain doesn't process this as a neutral software update. It interprets it as an existential threat to what you've been for years, decades, perhaps your entire life. Dr. Joe Dispenza has extensively documented this in his studies on epigenetic change and neuroplasticity, showing that our nervous system isn't just addicted to familiar thought patterns, it's literally biochemically dependent on the emotions you've repeatedly experienced. Every time you feel anxiety, fear, scarcity, or frustration, your body releases a specific cocktail of neurotransmitters and hormones that your cells have learned to expect, desire, and demand like a drug. When you try to change, when you declare a new reality, you're essentially cutting off the supply of this drug to 40 trillion addicted cells. Quantum physics adds an even deeper layer to this paradox through the concepts of superposition and wave function collapse. Before a particle makes what we call a quantum leap, it doesn't slide smoothly from one state to another. Instead, it exists in a state of superposition where it's simultaneously in the old state and the new, and paradoxically in neither at the same time. Niels Bohr described this phenomenon as a discontinuous transition, where the particle expresses a new probability in the field of potentiality, but in the intermediate moment, that invisible gap between what was and what will be exists in a void of pure potential that defies our linear understanding of change. Your nervous system, your identity, your personal reality follow exactly the same quantum principle when you initiate genuine manifestation. The fundamental mistake almost everyone makes is believing manifestation should be a comfortable, smooth, progressive process, like climbing stairs step by step. But the truth is that real transformation, quantum timeline shifts, new reality collapse, always first passes through a period of profound reorganization that can seem chaotic. It's as if the universe needs to first dismantle the old structures before building the new, but actually something much more complex and encouraging is happening at cellular and quantum levels. Let's dive deeper into this neurological rabbit hole, because what happens in your brain when you try to manifest a new reality is a fascinating chemical renegotiation. Imagine your brain as an ancient city with roads built over decades, each street representing a neural pattern, each avenue being a thought highway traveled thousands, perhaps millions of times. Now you decide to build a completely different route. But here's the challenge. The old roads don't just remain there, they have automatic neurochemical reward systems that try to lure you back whenever you attempt to create new pathways. Bruce Lipton demonstrated in his revolutionary research on epigenetics that our thoughts literally turn genes on and off. But what he also discovered is that the subconscious, which operates 95% of the time, is programmed to fiercely preserve its established patterns because, from an evolutionary perspective, what has kept you alive until now must be maintained at all costs, even if that cost is perpetual stagnation. But here's the crucial nuance. This system isn't sabotaging you out of malice. It's trying to protect you the only way it knows how, by keeping you in familiar territory where you've survived so far. The nervous system isn't just a set of wires transmitting signals. It's a sophisticated antenna that transmits and receives frequencies from the quantum field continuously, without pause, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Each emotional state you experience isn't just an internal sensation, it's a literal electromagnetic broadcast that propagates through the space around you, informing the field about who you are, what you expect, what you believe you deserve to receive back. Researchers at the Hartmouth Institute have measured this with impressive precision, showing that the heart's electromagnetic field, which is approximately 60 times stronger electrically and about 100 times stronger magnetically than the brain's, can be detected several meters away from the body. When you're in a state of stress, anxiety, or fear, this field becomes chaotic, incoherent, fragmented, like a poorly tuned radio station transmitting static. But when you enter a state of heart coherence, the field organizes into measurable harmonic patterns that literally restructure reality around you. And here's the fundamental distinction that needs to be understood. Coherence isn't simply calm or relaxation. Coherence is an active state of harmonic organization where heart, brain, and nervous system enter measurable mathematical synchronization, creating an electromagnetic field so potent and organized that it directly influences the collapse of quantum probabilities around you. Here's where most manifestation attempts fail catastrophically. People try to think positive while their bodies are transmitting a completely different frequency. It's like trying to play soft music on a violin while an entire orchestra is playing a different symphony. Your body, with its 40 trillion cells, each vibrating with emotional memories from the past, is transmitting an infinitely more powerful signal than your occasional conscious thoughts of abundance or freedom. Joe Dispenza calls this the body becoming the subconsciously programmed mind. And it's exactly why affirmations alone, without the somatic component, without nervous regulation, without genuine body coherence, are just whispers amid a symphony of biological conditioning. But here's the critical difference between genuine emotion and what many call fake it till you make it. Genuine, elevated emotion doesn't come from trying to force a feeling that doesn't exist. It comes from accessing real memories of moments when you felt gratitude, love, or joy, or from genuinely appreciating something simple in the present moment. It could be the memory of hugging someone you love, the feeling of sun on your skin, the taste of your favorite food. When you access these real memories or sensations, your body produces the authentic chemistry of elevated emotion. Faking, on the other hand, creates only additional tension because your nervous system knows you're lying to it. The concept of competitive neuroplasticity adds another fascinating layer to this process. When you begin installing a new neural pattern, it doesn't simply add to the old ones. Instead, what we can call a synaptic renegotiation occurs, where the new pattern needs to establish its presence in already occupied neural territory. It's like planting a new tree in a dense forest. It needs to find sunlight among already established canopies. Neuroscientist Michael Merzenich discovered that it takes approximately 21 days of consistent practice for a new neural circuit to begin establishing itself effectively. But here's the detail no one tells you. During those first days, especially in the first week, your brain will generate what neuroscience calls an extinction burst, a temporary increase in the intensity of the old pattern before it begins to weaken. This extinction burst phenomenon is crucial to understand because it's exactly when most people give up. Imagine you're manifesting financial abundance. In the first days of practice, paradoxically, your money worries may intensify. Not because the process isn't working, but because it's working so well that the old pattern is fighting for survival. It's like the last burst of light from a star before it transforms. Dramatic, but signaling a profound transformation underway. The quantum void, where this transformation happens, isn't a metaphorical or poetic place, it's a measurable state of transition, where the normal laws of cause and effect seem temporarily suspended. Quantum physics calls this decoherence and recoherence, a process where a system first loses its previous organization before reorganizing into a new pattern. And this principle doesn't apply only to subatomic particles, it governs all significant change in complex systems, including and especially your nervous system. When you genuinely enter the process of quantum manifestation, you're literally allowing your old coherence to dissolve so a new one can emerge. That familiar organization of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that defined your reality must first unravel. And this necessarily creates a period of apparent chaos, of disorientation that your ego interprets as mortal danger. But it's not destruction, it's reorganization. Like a caterpillar that must completely dissolve its old form within the cocoon before emerging as a butterfly, you must allow your old identity to liquefy before the new one can crystallize. Neville Goddard, one of the forgotten pioneers of conscious manifestation, described this phenomenon with impressive precision when he said that feeling is the secret. But what he really meant, and what most people don't understand, is that you need to sustain the feeling of the new reality, even when, especially when every fiber of your being is whispering that it's false, wrong, impossible. Florence Scovel Shinn expanded this concept by explaining that demonstration, her term for manifestation, always passes through a dark night of the soul where everything seems to be going in the opposite direction of what you declared. She wasn't being poetic or dramatic, was describing a real quantum phenomenon where the field must first dismantle old energetic structures before it can build new ones. The Hartmouth Institute documented something extraordinary about this transition process. They discovered that people in states of profound change show heart rate variability patterns that are initially more variable, almost chaotic from a traditional medical standpoint. But then, if the person maintains coherence practice, something remarkable happens. The apparent chaos abruptly reorganizes into a coherence pattern higher than what existed before, as if the nervous system needed to first expand its capacity before stabilizing at a higher frequency. It's exactly like water that needs to be heated to the phase transition point, pass through the critical moment of state change, before it can transform into steam and ascend to a completely different condition of matter. Now I'll share with you the specific nervous coherence protocol that allows you to navigate this quantum void with mastery. First, let's establish the quantum wave breath. It's not just inhaling and exhaling, it's creating a specific rhythm that synchronizes with the Schumann frequency, Earth's natural electromagnetic resonance that pulses at approximately 7.83 Hz. You'll breathe in cycles of 5 seconds, inhaling through the nose, 5 seconds exhaling through the mouth. During inhalation, visualize energy rising from the base of your spine to the top of your head. During exhalation, feel this energy descending down the front of your body back to the base, creating a complete circuit that Taoists call a microcosmic orbit. But here's the secret that transforms this from a common breathing technique into a quantum portal. In the moment between inhalation and exhalation, in that gap of 1 or 2 seconds, where you naturally pause, that's where you plant the seed of the new reality. In this void between breaths, you don't think, you simply feel the frequency of what you're manifesting as if it were already real. Absolutely real, undeniably real. It's in this moment of suspension that your nervous system is most receptive to reprogramming, because you're literally in the void between the old and the new. Now, here's the practical 60-second exercise you can do immediately after watching this video, what I call the coherence microdose. Place your right hand over your heart and your left over your abdomen. Close your eyes and breathe deeply 3 times, each breath slower than the last. On the first breath, simply feel the weight of your hands on your body. On the second, remember a real moment when you felt deep gratitude. It could be something simple like the taste of your favorite coffee or someone's embrace. On the third breath, allow this feeling of gratitude to expand from your heart to fill your entire body, then the space around you, then the entire environment. Now, and this is crucial, maintain this feeling for just 3 more normal breaths. Don't force it, don't exaggerate, just allow it to exist naturally. At the end, open your eyes slowly and notice how your body feels different. This is the feeling of coherence. It's subtle but profound, calm but energized, present but expansive. Practice this 3 times a day upon waking, midday, and before sleep, and you'll be creating what I call quantum anchor points, moments where you deliberately recalibrate your nervous system to the new frequency. Hartmut discovered that when you add genuine, elevated emotion to this process, something extraordinary happens at the physiological level. Your heart begins producing oxytocin in significantly larger quantities, and oxytocin isn't just the hormone of love or connection, it's a molecule that literally dissolves cortisol receptors in cells, physically breaking your body's addiction to stress. Simultaneously, your heart begins generating a coherent electromagnetic field that expands in toroidal form around you, creating what quantum physicists would recognize as a non-local field of influence. But here comes the part that goes against everything you've learned about manifestation. Instead of visualizing what you want, instead of imagining specific scenarios, you're going to do something much more powerful and much more quantum. You're simply going to sustain the feeling, the frequency, the energetic signature of already being the person who has what you desire. If it's financial abundance, you don't visualize money, you embody the feeling of total financial security in every cell. If it's health, you don't imagine your body healed, you feel vitality coursing through your organs now. If it's love, you don't visualize a partner, you become the magnetic field of realized love. This difference may seem subtle, but it's absolutely fundamental, because when you visualize specific things, you're operating from the mental level. But when you embody sensations, you're transmitting from the somatic, cellular, quantum level. The third and most challenging aspect of the protocol is temporal sustenance, because here's where 99% of people completely fail. They can generate the state for a few minutes, maybe even an hour during deep meditation, but then immediately return to the old broadcast as soon as they open their eyes. The secret is creating quantum anchor points throughout the day, specific moments where you deliberately return to the coherent state for just 60 seconds. It could be when you wake up, before each meal, whenever you pass through a during the environmental trigger you choose. In these moments, you don't need to do the complete practice, just 3 deep breaths while reactivating the feeling of the new identity, enough to keep the new neural circuit active and harmonize the system with the new frequency. The time distortion phenomenon that emerges when you maintain consistent coherence isn't a psychological illusion or perceptual trick. It's a direct consequence of operating in a state where the linear laws of cause and effect begin dissolving into something much more fluid, much more quantum. Einstein proved that time isn't a universal constant, but a relative experience that changes based on speed and gravity. But what quantum physics is discovering now is that coherent consciousness also influences our temporal perception, not through physical speed, but through density of presence. People consistently practicing the coherence protocol, the same intriguing phenomenon. Events that normally would take months to unfold begin happening in weeks. Synchronicities that defy statistical probability become daily occurrences. This brings us to the most radical concept in all manifestation physics. Time doesn't flow from past to future through the present as we believe. In quantum reality, all moments exist simultaneously in what physicists call the space-time block. And your consciousness, specifically your state of coherence or incoherence, determines which slice of this block you experience as now. When you enter deep, sustained coherence, you literally begin accessing information from different points in the space-time block. This is why people in deep meditative states often report insights about future events that later materialize with impressive precision. But here's where people get lost and where we need to be very clear. When they begin experiencing these time distortions, when impossible synchronicities start happening, when reality begins responding in ways that defy logic, the ego enters a state of maximum alert. Why? because the ego exists only in the linear paradigm of cause and effect. It needs the predictability of sequential time to maintain its illusion of control. When you begin operating in quantum time, where effect can precede cause, where intention collapses probabilities instantaneously, the ego interprets this as a threat to its existence. It's at this critical point that most people abandon the practice, but not because they're failing beckos, they're succeeding too much for the ego's comfort. The Institute of Noetic Sciences conducted fascinating experiments on this, placing experienced meditators in states of deep coherence, while monitoring not only their brainwaves, but also random number generators in the environment. What they discovered challenges our conventional understanding of how consciousness interacts with physical reality. During states of sustained coherence, the random number generators began showing statistically significant organized patterns, as if the meditator's coherence were literally harmonizing the randomness around them. Even more impressive, this effect began appearing seconds before the meditator reached peak coherence, suggesting that coherent consciousness not only influences the present, but also retroactively organizes the recent past to align with the future state. When you sustain the coherence protocol long enough, usually after about 2 weeks of consistent daily practice, something even deeper happens. You begin experiencing what I can only describe as direct information download from the field. These aren't thoughts in the traditional sense, not ideas you formulate through logical reasoning. They're complete packages of knowledge that simply appear in your consciousness, fully formed, as if they'd always been there waiting for you to tune to the right frequency to receive them. Tesla described this phenomenon when he said his brain was just a receiver. Edison had a specific practice of entering states between waking and sleeping to access this same field. They weren't geniuses in the traditional sense. They were people who discovered how to tune their neural antennas to receive transmissions from the unified field of consciousness. The final element that determines whether you can sustain manifestation or inevitably return to the old pattern is something no one talks about, because it goes against the entire culture of effort and control that dominates the Western world. You need to learn to trust the void, to love uncertainty, to become intimate with not knowing, because it's exactly when you release the neurotic need for external evidence that the quantum field finally has space to reorganize reality around you. This isn't passive surrender to fate or abandoning action. It's something infinitely more sophisticated and powerful. It's recognizing that your role isn't to force manifestation through Herculean effort. Your role is to maintain signal coherence, while allowing the infinite intelligence of the field to orchestrate the details of how, when, and through whom your new reality will materialize. The quantum field has access to possibilities and connections your conscious brain can't even imagine. It can harmonize synchronicities through chains of events that extend across continents and decades, but only, and this is absolutely critical, only when you stop micromanaging the process with your limited, linear mind. There's a principle in quantum physics called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that says you can't simultaneously know a particle's position and momentum with absolute precision. The more you try to fix one aspect, the more the other becomes undefined. And this isn't a limitation of our measuring instruments, it's a fundamental property of quantum reality. The same principle applies to manifestation with devastating precision. The more you try to control exactly how your manifestation will appear, the more you fix your attention on a specific route, the more you collapse infinite possibilities into a single probability line that's almost always the least efficient, the least elegant, the least miraculous. But when you maintain certainty of the end result, while remaining completely open to how, you allow the field to utilize all its infinite intelligence to create what Joe Dispenza calls the unknown manifestations that so exceed your expectations, you couldn't have conceived them before they happened. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio discovered something that revolutionizes our understanding of decision-making and intuition. He showed that people with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the brain area that processes somatic emotions, become unable to make good decisions even when they have access to all necessary logical information. Why? because our body, our entire nervous system, is constantly processing information from the quantum field that never reaches consciousness, creating what he calls somatic markers, subtle bodily sensations that guide us toward or away from certain choices. When you're in a state of sustained coherence, these somatic markers become incredibly precise, almost prophetic, guiding you through decisions and actions that seem irrational in the moment, but retrospectively reveal impressive intelligence. This is why people operating in this state, or from reports, they just knew they needed to be in a certain place, talk to a certain person, take a certain action, without any logical justification, only to discover that seemingly random decision was the crucial missing piece for their manifestation to materialize. It's not intuition in the vague mystical sense, it's your nervous system detecting patterns in the quantum field that your conscious mind can't process. But here's the final paradox that challenges the understanding of almost everyone trying to understand quantum manifestation. The moment when your manifestation is closest to materializing is often the moment it seems most distant, when external evidence most strongly suggests it's not working, when the temptation to give up is almost irresistible. This isn't cosmic cruelty or divine testing, it's pure physics. Just as darkness is deepest just before dawn, just as pressure reaches its maximum before release, just as the elastic band must be stretched before shooting forward, reality needs to create maximum tension between the old and the new before the quantum leap can occur. Neville Goddard called this the Sabbath moment, the point where you must rest completely in the certainty that it's done, even when every external evidence screams the contrary. It's a state of active trust, not passive. You continue taking inspired actions, but without the desperate need for them to produce specific results. You act from certainty, not toward it. And it's exactly here, in this moment of maximum tension between what your senses perceive and what your internal coherence knows to be true, that you make the choice that defines everything. Do you choose to trust the frequency transmitting or the feedback you're receiving? Do you choose to be faithful to your vision or to circumstances? Do you choose to operate from quantum certainty or Newtonian doubt? Because this choice, made moment by moment in periods of maximum tension, is what separates those who live extraordinary lives from those who remain trapped in loops of mediocrity. It's not talent, not luck, not privilege. It's simply the willingness to maintain coherence when incoherence seems more reasonable, to transmit abundance when scarcity is knocking at the door, to embody health when symptoms are screaming, to be love when loneliness is suffocating. This is true quantum mastery, and it's available to anyone willing to pay the price, which isn't effort or sacrifice, but simply the courage to trust the process when the process seems to be failing, because it's exactly there, in that moment of absolute quantum faith, that miracles stop being exceptions and become your new normal. The quantum field doesn't respond to the intensity of your desire, it responds to the consistency of your coherence. And when you learn to maintain that coherence even in the void, especially in the void, you become what the ancient mystics called a master of reality. Now you understand why that initial discomfort, that visceral resistance you felt when declaring your new reality, wasn't a sign of failure, but the clearest evidence that transformation had already begun. Your nervous system wasn't sabotaging you out of cruelty, it was reorganizing for a frequency it had never experienced before. Your cells weren't betraying yuthi, were undergoing a profound recalibration, learning to vibrate in harmony with a reality that hadn't yet materialized. The apparent chaos you experienced wasn't destruction, it was the quantum field methodically dissolving the patterns that kept you trapped, so you could finally experience who you really are when not limited by the chemistry of the past. Every moment of doubt was an old neural circuit being gently deactivated. Every wave of anxiety was your old system making its last attempt to keep you in known territory before surrendering to the new frequency. Every sensation that you were doing something wrong was literally decades of conditioning being dissolved to make space for the new. And now that you understand this, you'll never interpret discomfort the same way again. You'll recognize it for what it really is, the clearest sign you're on the right path, that change is happening, that the quantum leap is in process. The journey I've described here isn't theory or abstract philosophy, it's a testable, reproducible protocol that thousands of people are using at this exact moment to collapse new realities that once seemed impossible. But let me be absolutely clear about one thing: knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment. You can watch 1,000 videos about quantum manifestation, read all of Joe Dispenza's books, study all available quantum physics, but if you don't apply the coherence protocol daily, if you don't commit to sustaining the new signal even when the old one is whispering seductively, if you don't develop the courage to trust the void between realities, then you'll remain exactly where you are, dreaming of changes while transmitting the same frequency as always. Remember, the difference between those who consistently manifest and those who remain frustrated isn't mental power, isn't willpower, isn't even faith in the traditional sense. It's simply the understanding that your body needs to be trained to sustain the new frequency, and this requires consistent practice, patience with the process, and above all, compassion with yourself during moments of apparent setback. Because setbacks aren't failures, they are recalibrations. Moments of doubt aren't weaknesses, they are opportunities to strengthen your coherence. Periods of intense discomfort aren't punishments, they are portals to profound transformation. The protocol I've shared: quantum wave breath, the coherence microdose, the anchor points throughout the day aren't just techniques. They're ways to fundamentally retrain how your nervous system processes reality. When you practice consistently, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're literally reconfiguring the antenna through which you transmit and receive information from the quantum field. And when this reconfiguration reaches critical mass, usually after 2 to 3 weeks of daily practice, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to manifest and begin simply being the manifestation. The choice is now entirely yours. You can close this video and return to your normal life. Let the old patterns gently resume control. Continue transmitting the same frequency, been transmitting for years, and continue receiving the same results. Or you can make the quantum decision now, in this moment, to become a conscious transmitter of new reality, to do the inner work that precedes all external change, to trust the process, especially when the process seems impossible. If this video touched something deep within you, if you felt that shiver of recognition that happens when a fundamental truth is revealed, then your soul already knows which choice to make. Your nervous system is already beginning to reorganize just from being exposed to this information. The question isn't whether transformation is possible, the question is whether you're willing to sustain coherence long enough for it to complete. Subscribe to the channel now. Activate all notifications, because this is just the beginning of a radical transformation journey we'll make together. And most importantly, write in the comments, "I trust the void," as your public declaration that you're ready for the quantum leap. No matter how uncomfortable the process may initially seem, because always remember, you're not trying to access the quantum field from outside of the quantum field experiencing its own infinity through the temporary illusion of being human. Your body isn't an obstacle to manifestation, it's the instrument through which the universe becomes conscious of itself. And now that you know this, now that you understand the protocol, now that you have the tools, nothing will ever be the same again. Reality is waiting for your new transmission. Begin now.